The street lights flickered as the evening turned into night. On one corner of the busy road, a neon board glowed with shaky red letters. Help wanted. Beneath it, a woman stood perfectly still. At first, people thought she was waiting for a bus, or maybe someone had left her there. But as hours passed, it became clear that she was not ordinary. Her skin carried a soft shine, almost like metal catching moonlight. Her eyes glowed faintly, two circles of cold blue light that never blinked too long. Her clothes looked simple but not like anything bought from local stores. Strangers slowed their steps whenever they saw her, whispering, laughing nervously, and then hurrying away. The city kept moving. Cars roared past. Children pulled their parents away from her. A group of workers leaving a diner pointed and shook their heads. "She's been here all day," one of them said. "Weird girl. Doesn't eat, doesn't talk, just stares at that sign." They laughed for a moment, but none of them dared to go closer. By midnight, she was still there. The cold wind brushed against her silver hair, making it dance lightly around her shoulders. She did not shiver, did not move, did not even look lost. She only kept her gaze fixed on the glowing board, as if those two words, "help wanted," were the reason for her entire existence. Across the road, a man noticed her. He had seen her that morning while rushing to work. Now, 12 hours later, he found her in the same place. That made his chest tighten with unease. Nobody stands still that long. Not without food, not without water. He leaned against a street pole, pretending to check his phone, but his eyes kept sliding back to her. The crowd gave her space, forming an invisible circle around her, but their eyes were sharp, filled with judgment. Some thought she was insane. Others whispered that she might be dangerous. And yet, despite all the opinions, nobody dared to help. The man told himself to leave. Not my problem. Don't get involved. But he couldn't take his eyes off her. Something about the way she stood there, silent, patient, almost hopeful, felt heavy on his heart. She didn't look desperate, but she looked like someone who had been waiting for something important. The wind grew colder, and the night deepened. The man wrapped his jacket tighter. Across the street, the woman finally moved. She lifted her face slowly and scanned the crowd with her glowing eyes. Dozens of strangers passed by, but when her gaze locked onto him, he felt his breath catch. It was not a normal stare. It was sharp, heavy, almost pulling him closer without words. For a moment, he felt as though she had spoken directly to his mind. Just one silent message: do not walk away. He shook his head quickly, trying to break the strange feeling. Maybe he was imagining things. Maybe she was just another lost soul. But then why did it feel like she had been waiting only for him? Two teenagers passing by laughed loudly. "Look at her. She looks like some alien freak." They pulled out their phones, ready to take pictures. But before they could, her glowing eyes shifted toward them. The teenagers froze, shivered, and hurried away without another word. The man noticed that, how she didn't move, didn't speak, yet somehow pushed them away with nothing more than a stare. His pulse quickened. He knew then, she was not pretending. She was not some street performer. And she was definitely not human. But if she was alien, why here? Why under a human sign asking for help? Why wait in silence all day, all night, until someone noticed? The man's thoughts twisted into knots. He should leave. He should not take the risk. But deep inside, something told him this moment mattered. The woman looked tired now, her shoulders a little lower, her eyes dimmer than before. And yet she stayed waiting, believing, hoping. He took a step forward, then another. Each step across the street felt heavy, as though invisible hands tried to push him back. But he ignored them. His eyes stayed locked with hers, and the noise of the city disappeared around him. When he finally reached her side, he opened his mouth to speak. But before he could say a word, she lifted her hand. In it, she held a small torn piece of paper, blackened at the edges as if it had been burned. Strange marks covered it, symbols that looked alive, glowing faintly in the dark. The man froze, his voice caught in his throat. This was not a beggar, not a wanderer, not even a refugee. This was something far stranger. The woman tilted her head, eyes filled with quiet intensity, and pointed at the glowing sign above her. Then she pointed at him. And just like that, the mystery began. The man stood frozen in front of her. The piece of paper in her hand glowed faintly with strange marks, like a language he had never seen before. It looked old, half-burned, yet alive with a faint light. She held it out with steady hands, her glowing blue eyes fixed on his face as if waiting for him to understand. He didn't, but something deep inside told him this was not random. She wasn't begging for food or asking for money. She wasn't lost in the way normal people were. She had been standing beneath that sign for a reason, and now, somehow, he was part of it. "Do you need help?" he whispered. His voice cracked with uncertainty. The alien woman tilted her head slowly, like a child learning how to listen. Then she pointed at the help wanted sign above them. After that, she pointed at him again. The meaning was clear. She had chosen him. His heart raced. Around them, people were still moving, still whispering. A woman pulling her groceries shook her head. "Don't talk to her, boy. She's trouble." A group of workers passed by, muttering, "Crazy fool. She's not even human." Their words cut through the air like sharp knives. But the man could not turn away now. Curiosity was stronger than fear. He took the small paper from her hand. The moment his fingers touched it, a jolt of warmth ran through his skin, like touching fire that did not burn. The glowing marks shimmered for a moment, then calmed, leaving him breathless. "What is this?" he asked, staring at the strange symbols. The alien woman said nothing. Instead, she reached forward gently, touching his wrist with her cool fingers. She did not hurt him, but the touch carried a weight, like a silent promise. Her eyes seemed to say, "You don't need to read it. You only need to follow." The man pulled back slightly, his instincts warning him. This was madness. This was dangerous. He should throw the paper back and walk away. He should disappear into the safety of the crowd. Forget this ever happened. But when he looked into her eyes again, his resolve broke. There was no threat in them. Only calm, quiet determination. She was waiting for him. Not just anyone. Not the hundreds of people who had passed her that day. Only him. He asked again, louder this time. "Do you need help?" For the first time, her lips parted. A sound slipped out, soft and broken, like someone learning to speak for the first time. "Home," she whispered. The word was shaky, uncertain, but clear enough to freeze him where he stood. Home. His throat tightened. How could she know that word? Why say it to him? Before he could ask more, a group of men passing by stopped and laughed. "Look at him," one said, pointing, talking to the alien freak. "Maybe she'll eat him next." Their cruel laughter filled the air. The man clenched his fists, anger burning in his chest. He wanted to yell at them, but he didn't. Instead, he glanced back at the woman. She was calm, unaffected by their words. But her hand trembled slightly, just for a second, before she steadied herself again. That small tremble broke something inside him. She wasn't dangerous. She was vulnerable, and she had been mocked and ignored all day long. Without another thought, he folded the strange paper carefully and slipped it into his pocket. Then he spoke firmly, "Come with me." Her glowing eyes softened. For the first time, she nodded. As they began walking away from the neon sign, the crowd parted silently. Some stared in disbelief. Others shook their heads. A few muttered warnings, but no one stopped them. The man guided her carefully, his mind racing with questions. Who was she? Why had she chosen him? What was on that strange piece of paper? And most of all, why had she stood beneath that sign for so long, waiting only for him? They walked through the dark streets, shadows stretching around them. The woman followed quietly, her steps light, almost soundless. Every so often, she would glance at him, as if studying his every move. He tried to calm his heartbeat. "What are you?" he whispered under his breath. The alien woman did not answer. But when they passed under a broken street lamp, her silver skin shimmered brightly for a moment, confirming what he already feared. She was not human. The silence between them grew heavy. Every second carried more tension, more mystery. He thought about turning back, about leaving her there before it was too late. But each time he looked at her, the thought vanished. He could not abandon her. They turned down a quieter street, far from the neon lights and busy sidewalks. The city seemed quieter here, too quiet. The man felt eyes on them, hidden eyes watching from the shadows. His skin prickled, his instincts screamed. And then he realized, she wasn't just waiting for him. She had been hiding. The faint sound of boots echoed from behind them. Someone was following. The man's breath caught. His steps slowed. He turned slightly, enough to see dark figures moving in the distance, their shapes sharp and purposeful. They weren't random strangers. They were hunting her. He looked at the alien woman beside him. Her glowing eyes did not show fear. She only stared straight ahead, as if she already knew this would happen. The man's heart pounded harder. He finally understood. She hadn't just wanted help. She had wanted him because now, whether he liked it or not, he was part of something far bigger, something far more dangerous. And the night had only just begun. The man walked faster, his steps echoing against the empty street. The alien woman followed closely, her glowing eyes scanning the shadows around them. She did not speak, yet her silence said more than words. Every second, the feeling of being watched grew heavier, pressing against his chest like invisible hands. Behind them, the faint sound of boots striking pavement grew clearer. The man glanced over his shoulder. 3 figures moved in the distance, their shapes blending with the darkness. They weren't ordinary pedestrians. Their pace was steady, too steady, like hunters closing in on their prey. His throat tightened. He had no idea who they were or what they wanted, but he knew one thing for sure. They weren't following him. They were after her. The alien woman seemed aware too. Her glowing eyes narrowed, and for the first time, she touched his arm. Her grip was cool but strong, guiding him forward as if telling him not to stop. He whispered, his voice shaky. "Who are they? Do you know them?" She didn't answer. Instead, she raised her hands slightly and made a motion. 2 fingers pressed together, then spread apart. It looked like a warning, danger. The man's pulse quickened. He wanted to ask more, but the sound of boots grew louder. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her down a narrow alley, hoping to lose the shadows. The alley was dark, lined with trash bins and broken lamps. The smell of old garbage filled the air. They rushed through, their footsteps splashing against puddles. For a moment he thought they were safe. But then a low metallic click echoed behind them. He froze. It wasn't a random sound. It was the sound of weapons being prepared. The woman's grip on his arm tightened. Her glowing eyes flickered, almost brighter, as if fueled by tension. She pointed ahead, urging him to keep moving. They emerged from the alley into a quieter street. The man's heart pounded so hard it hurt. He turned to her, voice cracking. "What do you want from me? Why me?" She tilted her head, her silver hair catching the weak light. Slowly, she raised her hand and touched his chest with her fingertips. Her lips parted, and in a broken voice, she whispered again, "Home." The word cut through him. Home. Why keep saying that word? Did she want him to take her to his home? Or was she asking for something else? Something deeper? Before he could speak again, a shout echoed from behind. The hunters had followed them out of the alley. Their voices were sharp, harsh, filled with authority in a language he couldn't understand. One of them raised a hand, signaling for them to stop. The man's stomach twisted. He had no plan, no weapon, nothing. He was just an ordinary man caught in something he didn't understand. Yet when he looked at the alien woman beside him, he felt a strange responsibility. She had chosen him. She had waited for him. Walking away was no longer an option. He whispered to her, desperate, "If they're after you, then tell me why. Please, just give me something." Her glowing eyes softened for a second. Then, with slow movements, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny metal object. It looked like a shard of glass, sharp and clear, but glowing faintly from within. She pressed it into his hand. The warmth from the object spread through his palm, running up his arm like liquid fire. He gasped, almost dropping it, but she placed her cool fingers over his and closed them tightly. He stared at her in shock. "What is this?" She leaned closer, whispering a single word, almost too soft to hear. "Key." Before he could ask what it meant, the hunters shouted again, this time louder, their footsteps quickening. The man looked at the glowing shard in his hand, then at her calm, glowing eyes. A storm of questions filled his head. Key to what? Why me? What happens if I help her? What happens if I don't? The hunters spread out now, their dark shapes closing in from three sides. Escape was nearly impossible. The man's chest tightened with panic. But the alien woman remained calm. She looked at him, as if waiting for his decision. He swallowed hard, sweat running down his face. He could hand her over, walk away, and pretend none of this ever happened. Or he could do the unthinkable. Protect her, stand against whoever was hunting her, and step into a world he wasn't ready for. The woman's eyes locked with his once more. In them he saw no fear, only quiet trust. It was as if she already knew what choice he would make. The hunters shouted again, their voices sharp, demanding. The man's fists clenched around the glowing shard. He stepped in front of her, heart racing. For the first time he spoke with strength. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The alley fell silent for a heartbeat. The hunters froze, surprised by his defiance. And in that silent moment, the alien woman's hand touched his shoulder. Her glowing eyes flickered, almost proud, as though she had been waiting all along for this choice. The tension thickened, sharper than ever. The night no longer felt like his own. He had crossed the line, and now there was no turning back. The man's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. The glowing shard burned faintly in his hand, sending waves of strange warmth through his arm. He didn't know what it was or why she had given it to him, but he knew one thing: this was no ordinary night, and she was no ordinary woman. The hunters stood at a distance, their dark forms blocking the exit of the narrow street. Their weapons glimmered faintly under the dim lights. They didn't rush forward. Instead, they waited, calling out in their sharp, foreign language, as if warning him to step aside. The alien woman stayed calm behind him. She didn't shake, didn't cry, didn't even look afraid. Her glowing eyes focused on him, patient and steady, as if everything depended on his next move. His thoughts screamed inside his head. What am I doing? These people aren't playing games. They're armed, they're trained. I don't even know her name. I should walk away before it's too late. But then he remembered the way she had stood all day beneath that flickering sign, ignored and mocked by everyone who saw her. He remembered the single word she had spoken, home. He remembered the trembling of her hand when strangers had laughed at her. And for the first time in years, he felt something powerful inside him. A choice. The hunters shouted again, louder this time. One of them stepped forward, raising his weapon. The man swallowed hard, fear clawing at his chest. But instead of moving away, he spread his arms slightly, shielding her behind him. His voice shook, but the words carried weight. She's with me. The street fell silent. The hunters paused, exchanging quick looks. They did not lower their weapons. Instead, one of them barked something harsh, pointing directly at the alien woman. Their meaning was clear. Give her to us or face the consequences. The man's knees felt weak, but he stood firm. No, he said louder this time. Not happening. Behind him, the alien woman placed her hand gently on his shoulder. Her touch was cool, calming. When he looked back, her glowing eyes met his. For the first time, she gave a faint, almost human smile. It wasn't a smile of gratitude. It was a smile of trust. She believed in his decision. The hunters began to move closer now, their steps slow but steady, weapons pointed. The man's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He had no plan, no weapon, no idea how to fight them. But he refused to step aside. Run, he whispered to her. If they come for me, you run. But she didn't move. Instead, she shook her head. For the first time, she spoke more than one word. Her voice was soft, broken, but clear enough. Not leave. Those two words struck him harder than any weapon. She wasn't going to abandon him. She had chosen him, and now she would stand with him. The hunters closed in. Shadows stretched longer across the ground. The man gripped the glowing shard tighter, and suddenly it pulsed in his hand. Light spread from it, faint but growing stronger, wrapping his palm in a soft glow. The hunters froze for a second, their eyes widening. They recognized it. One of them barked angrily, pointing at the shard. Another raised his weapon higher. The man looked down at the glowing object, confusion flooding his mind. What is this thing?" he whispered. The alien woman leaned close, her glowing eyes locked on his. She whispered a single word. Clear this time. Power. He shivered. He had no idea what that meant, but he didn't have time to ask. The hunters were moving in again. The man's instincts screamed at him to run, but his decision had already been made. He wasn't leaving her. He wasn't handing her over. With a deep breath, he stepped back, keeping her shielded behind him. His voice shook, but he forced it out. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The hunters stopped. For a moment, the street was silent except for the wind rushing through the buildings. The man felt his whole body trembling, but he did not move. The alien woman touched his hand again, closing her fingers gently over the shard. The light grew brighter, spilling across the street like a faint shield. The hunters stepped back, shouting in frustration. They didn't fire. They didn't dare. The man's chest tightened. He realized then that whatever the shard was, it gave him something the hunters feared. He turned his head slightly, whispering to her, "We need to leave. Now." She nodded. Together, they moved quickly down the street. The hunters followed at a distance, shouting angrily, but they did not shoot. The glowing shard seemed to protect them somehow, pushing the hunters back without a fight. As they disappeared into the night, the man's mind spun with questions. Who was she? Why did she give him this shard? And why had she chosen him out of all the people in the city? But one thing was certain now. His decision was made. He was no longer just a curious bystander. He had chosen to protect her, and that choice had changed everything. He didn't know where this path would lead, but he knew there was no turning back. And somewhere deep inside, he felt the first spark of something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. The man's small apartment sat on the edge of the city, far away from the neon lights and busy streets. It wasn't much, just a single bedroom, a small kitchen, and a living space filled with old furniture. To him, it had always been quiet and lonely. But tonight, as he opened the door and stepped inside with the alien woman behind him, it felt completely different. She paused at the doorway, her glowing eyes scanning everything. For a moment, she didn't move. Her silver hair caught the dim yellow light from the lamp, and her hands brushed gently against the doorframe, as if testing the air. Finally, she stepped in, silent and graceful, her bare feet making no sound against the wooden floor. The man locked the door quickly, his heart still racing. The shard he carried still glowed faintly in his pocket, as if reminding him of the danger that followed them. He pulled off his jacket and ran a hand through his hair, trying to steady his breathing. "You'll be safe here," he said, though the words felt weak. He wasn't sure if it was true. The alien woman walked slowly through the room. Her movements were curious, almost childlike. She touched the curtains, feeling the rough fabric between her fingers. She tapped lightly against the wall, listening to the hollow echo. Her glowing eyes studied the old books stacked on a table, the flickering television screen, and the half-finished mug of cold coffee on the counter. Then she stopped. Her gaze had landed on a small wooden frame sitting by the window. It was a photograph, an old picture of the man with his family. His parents smiling. His younger brother, grinning with his arm around him. A memory frozen in time. The woman reached out carefully and lifted the frame. Her glowing eyes softened as she studied it. Her lips parted, and for the second time that night, she spoke a word in broken English. "Home." The man froze. His chest tightened. That word again. It wasn't random. She wasn't just repeating something she had overheard. She had connected it to his photograph, to his family, to something deeper. He walked toward her slowly. "Why do you keep saying that?" What do you mean by home? She turned to him, her glowing eyes shimmering with strange emotion. She placed the photograph gently back on the table, then pressed her hand against her own chest. Home, she whispered again, then touched the photo with her fingertips. His mind spun. Did she mean his home, or was she searching for her own? The connection was unclear, but something about the way she said it made him believe it was both. The silence stretched between them. The man sat down heavily on the couch, his hands rubbing his face. I don't understand any of this, he muttered. Why me? Why that sign? And what is this shard? He pulled it out of his pocket. The faint glow painted his palm with soft light. The woman's eyes locked on the shard instantly. She stepped forward and knelt in front of him, her hand hovering just above it. She didn't touch it, but the glow grew brighter, reacting to her presence. Finally, she whispered another broken word. Key. The man looked at her, confused. Key to what? She shook her head slowly, as if she didn't know the English words to explain. Instead, she reached into the pocket of her torn clothes and pulled out the burnt piece of paper she had shown earlier. She placed it beside the shard. The symbols on the paper pulsed faintly, glowing in rhythm with the shard's light. The man's eyes widened. The shard and the paper were connected. He leaned closer, studying the strange marks. They weren't just symbols. They looked like a map, or instructions. Before he could ask more, the woman suddenly stiffened. Her glowing eyes darted toward the window. She stepped quickly across the room and pulled the curtains shut. Then she pressed her finger to her lips, silent warning. The man's stomach dropped. He rushed to the window and peeked through the gap. In the distance, across the street, shadows moved. Figures stood near the lampposts, scanning the area. The hunters. They had found them. His pulse quickened. He backed away from the window, panic rising. They're here, he whispered. The alien woman stayed calm. She walked to him, placed her cool hand on his arm, and looked into his eyes. Her gaze was steady, filled with quiet trust. She wasn't afraid. She believed in him. For a long moment he stared back at her. Something shifted inside him. He realized she wasn't just running from them. She wasn't just waiting for help. She was carrying something important, something worth risking everything for. And somehow she had chosen him to protect it. The hunter's shadows grew longer outside the window. Boots struck the pavement. Voices murmured in that same sharp language. Time was running out. The man clenched his fists around the shard and the paper. His decision in the street had already changed his life, but this moment would define everything. He could hide and hope the hunters left, or he could stand and fight for her. He looked at her one more time. She nodded faintly, as if reading his thoughts, as if telling him he wasn't alone anymore. The man took a deep breath. Fear still gripped him, but under it, something stronger burned. Purpose. This is my home, he said quietly. And if they come here, we won't run. The alien woman's glowing eyes flickered, almost proud. She placed her hand over his heart and whispered one last word. Together. The night outside grew darker. The hunters closed in. And inside that small apartment, the real battle was about to begin. The man sat on the edge of his couch, the glowing shard in his palm. Its light pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat, filling the room with a faint glow. The alien woman sat across from him, her silver hair falling softly over her shoulders, her glowing blue eyes locked on him. Outside, faint shadows moved past the window. The hunters were near, but they had not broken in yet. The silence inside the apartment was heavy. The man finally broke it with a whisper. I need answers. I need to know why you chose me. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled. The alien woman tilted her head. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she reached for the burnt piece of paper again. She spread it out on the table, beside the glowing shard. The symbols burned faintly, shifting slightly as if alive. Then she tapped the paper gently and pointed at him. The man frowned. This is connected to me? She nodded. His stomach twisted. He leaned closer, studying the marks. They weren't just random lines. Now, under the shard's light, they looked like a pattern. path, almost like coordinates on a map. He whispered, half to himself. So, you were waiting under that sign because of this? Because of me? The alien woman's glowing eyes softened. She placed her hand against her chest, then against his. Her lips parted, and she spoke in her soft, broken voice. You chosen. The words made him freeze. Chosen? By who? For what? His heart pounded as he stared at her. Chosen for what? Tell me. The woman hesitated. She looked down at her hands, struggling. Her lips moved, searching for words. Finally, she whispered, protect. The man leaned back, his mind spinning. Protect? Protect what? The shard? The paper? Or her? Before he could ask again, she raised her hands and made a shape in the air, a circle with her fingers. Then she pointed at the shard, then back at him. She struggled, her voice breaking. You hold key. Without, you lost. His chest tightened. It wasn't just random. The shard didn't just glow for anyone. It glowed for him. That was why she had waited. That was why she had stood under that sign, ignoring hundreds of strangers until he came along. The man shook his head in disbelief. But I'm no one. I'm just ordinary. The alien woman's eyes locked with his. Slowly, she shook her head. Not ordinary. Human. The way she said the word made his skin prickle. It wasn't an insult. It was reverence. She didn't see him as weak. She saw him as something more. He opened his mouth to reply, but then a sharp noise cut through the silence. Boots stomping closer outside. Voices shouted in that same harsh language. The hunters were growing impatient. The alien woman stood and moved to the window, pulling the curtain back slightly. She watched the shadows gathering outside, her glowing eyes narrowing. Then she turned back to him and pressed a finger to her lips. The man's chest tightened. He wanted to run, to escape, but something inside him told him to stay. He clenched the shard tightly in his fist. Its light grew stronger, as if feeding on his determination. He looked at her again. You said I'm chosen. You said I'm supposed to protect. But protect what? You? The shard? Or something bigger? She walked back to him, slow and steady. Her movements were graceful, deliberate, as if each step carried meaning. She placed her hand over his again, closing his fingers tightly around the shard. Then, with effort, she spoke clearly, one word at a time. Protect a future. The man's breath caught, his mind filled with questions, but before he could speak, a loud crash shook the walls. The hunters had forced their way into the building. His heart raced. He jumped to his feet, panic rising. We can't fight them. Not like this. But the alien woman didn't look afraid. She stepped closer, her glowing eyes steady, and whispered one final truth before the door burst open. You are not alone. The door slammed against the wall. Dark figures stormed inside, their weapons gleaming. The man backed away, clutching the shard, his heart pounding like thunder. And in that moment, he realized the truth wasn't just about her. It was about him. He wasn't chosen by accident. He wasn't ordinary anymore. He was holding something bigger than himself. Something the hunters feared. Something that could change everything. The alien woman stood beside him, her glowing eyes fierce. Together, they faced the door as the shadows poured in. And as the shard in his hand flared brighter than ever before, the man finally understood. His life had never truly been his own. It had always been leading to this moment. The door slammed open with a violent crash, shaking the walls of the small apartment. Splinters of wood scattered across the floor as three dark figures stormed inside. Their faces were hidden beneath black helmets, their weapons raised and ready. The sharp metallic sound of their boots echoed across the room. The man's breath froze in his chest. His hand clenched tightly around the glowing shard, its light flaring brighter as if it sensed danger. The alien woman stepped closer to him, her glowing eyes steady, unafraid. Together they faced the intruders. The hunters shouted in their harsh language, their voices filled with command. One pointed directly at the alien woman, demanding her surrender. Another gestured angrily at the shard in the man's hand, as if warning him to drop it. But he didn't. His legs trembled, his chest pounded, but he stood firm. "She's not going anywhere," he said, his voice low but strong. The hunters exchanged quick looks. Then one of them stepped forward, weapon raised. Before the man could react, the alien woman reached out and touched the shard in his hand. The room erupted with light. A wave of energy exploded outward, invisible yet powerful. The hunters staggered, their weapons shaking as sparks flew from the barrels. The man gasped, his arm burning with heat, but he didn't let go. The shard pulsed like a living heart, releasing waves of force that pushed the hunters back. For the first time, fear flickered in their movements. They weren't just after her, they feared what the shard could do. The alien woman whispered urgently, her broken voice cutting through the chaos. "Key, awaken." The man's mind spun. Awaken? What was he awakening? Before he could ask, the hunters regrouped. One barked an order and another fired. A bolt of blue energy shot across the room, striking the wall and sending sparks flying. The man ducked, his ears ringing, his heart racing. The alien woman pulled him up, her grip firm. "Together," she whispered again. He swallowed hard and nodded. Somehow he trusted her. Somehow he believed. The shard pulsed again, brighter this time. Images flashed in his mind. Stars burning in the distance, ships crossing black skies, voices calling out in languages he didn't know but somehow understood. He stumbled, gripping his head. The shard wasn't just light. It was memory, knowledge, a key to something far beyond Earth. The hunters noticed his struggle. One shouted in alarm, pointing at him. Another rushed forward, weapon raised. The man raised the shard instinctively. A beam of pure light shot forward, striking the hunter in the chest and sending him flying back into the wall. The impact shook the apartment, leaving cracks in the plaster. The man gasped, staring at his own hand in disbelief. What did I just do?" The alien woman's glowing eyes softened. "Protect," she whispered. The hunters didn't retreat. Instead, they regrouped again, angrier than before. Two moved to block the door, while the third aimed directly at the alien woman. Time slowed. The man's heart pounded like thunder. He knew in that moment he had a choice. He could run, leave her to them, and pretend none of this ever happened. Or he could do what he had already started. Stand, fight, and protect her no matter the cost. He tightened his grip on the shard. His voice shook, but he forced the words out. "You'll have to go through me first." The hunters shouted, preparing to fire. And then, something unexpected happened. The shard in his hand grew so bright that the entire apartment glowed with white light. The hunters shielded their eyes, stumbling back. The alien woman pressed closer to him, her hand over his, guiding the light. A sudden wave of energy burst outward, shaking the building. The windows shattered, the lights flickered, and for a brief moment, silence filled the air. When the light faded, the hunters were gone. The man staggered, his chest heaving. Where did they go?" The alien woman's glowing eyes fixed on him. "Not gone," she whispered. "Return, stronger." He dropped onto the couch, the shard still glowing faintly in his hand. Sweat covered his face. He looked at her, desperate. "Tell me the truth. All of it. Why me? Why this shard?" She sat beside him, her eyes soft but filled with weight. Slowly, she placed her hand on his chest. "You chosen, not mistake. You hold a future." His throat tightened. He wanted to demand more, but deep down he understood. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Outside, the city looked normal again. Cars driving, people walking, life continuing as if nothing had happened. But in the shadows, far from the apartment, more figures gathered. More hunters. Their helmets reflected the city lights, their voices sharp with anger. The man stared at the shard in his hand. It pulsed again, soft but steady, like a promise. He looked at the alien woman, her glowing eyes calm despite everything. He exhaled slowly. "Then we fight. Together." She gave the faintest smile. A smile not of relief, but of certainty. She had waited all day beneath that sign for him. And now, finally, her wait was over. But the real battle had only just begun.